Mr. President, members of the court, it is an honor to appear before you on behalf of the Sudan to address the facts. As I will explain, including by reference to UN sources, there can be no doubt that the Masalit people is currently being subjected to genocide, and that there is serious evidence that the UAE is failing to prevent this and is complicit. I will also deal very briefly with the existence of the dispute in case the UAE seeks to raise this as a point. It is notorious that since November 2023, the Masalit non-Arab ethnic group in the Sudan has been targeted and subjected to acts of genocide and other prohibited acts which continue to this day. The perpetrators of these acts are members of the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, a militia comprised of Arab Darfuris, led by a former commander of the Janjaweed militia, General Mohammed Hamdan Daglo. The situation was accurately summarized as follows by the current US Secretary of State, the Honorable Marco Rubio, during his confirmation hearing before the US Congress in January of this year. By its very definition, this is a real genocide. This is the ethnic targeting of specific groups for extermination, for elimination, by groups, by the way, that are being funded by nations that we have alliances and partnerships with in other parts of the world, and we should express that clearly. I think, and part of our engagement with the UAE, and it will have to be a pragmatic engagement, I mean, they are important players in what we hope to resolve in the Middle East, and I think, as part of that engagement, we also need to raise the fact that they are openly supporting an entity that is carrying out a genocide. Against this backdrop, and in circumstances where the UAE's open support for the RSF continues, notwithstanding the fact that the RSF's ongoing siege of El Fasher is increasingly at serious risk of culminating in further acts of genocide, and the RSF's attacks against other gathering places in West and North Darfur for members of the Masalit people who have been displaced by the conflict have also escalated over the past month, the Sudan had no choice but to approach the court for urgent interim relief. It's important to understand why the current US Secretary of State felt able to express the situation in the forthright terms he used. In the spring of 2023, the RSF was increasingly capturing territory in Darfur. During clashes in El Janina in West Darfur in May-June 2023, the RSF and militias aligned with it carried out large-scale attacks on civilians, the Masalit population in particular. They conducted a systematic campaign to extirpate the city's Masalit community. The massacre by the RSF has been described as a deluge of atrocities and a killing frenzy. Between 10,000 and 15,000 persons were killed. In this and other atrocities, the RSF has targeted gathering sites for internally displaced persons, IDPs, which have been systematically attacked, burned, and destroyed. In November 2023, the United Nations Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide, Alice Wairumu Deritu, described the events in West Darfur, in the following terms: rape and other forms of sexual and gender-based violence, including sexual slavery, have been rampantly perpetrated as a weapon of war. Entire villages have been burnt, often with the plan to attack announced in advance. Derogatory and dehumanizing language such as slaves has been persistently used as an element of incitement to violence. Conditions of life have been deprived, with medical facilities and transportation destroyed, and access to water and electricity deliberately obstructed. This all points to risk factors for genocide. Instrumental to the RSF's prosecution of its campaign of genocide since June 2023 was its securing of new supply routes for weapons, equipment, and logistics for use in the conflict. As a result, the RSF was now able to use several types of weapons, several types of heavy and sophisticated weapons, and these played a major role in its capture of El Janina. In January 2024, the UN Security Council's panel of experts on the Sudan, whose members had been appointed by a composition of the Security Council, which included the UAE itself, reported that the RSF's main supply route for arms is through eastern Chad, which borders West Darfur. The panel assessed allegations that a heavy rotation of cargo planes coming from Abu Dhabi International Airport to Amjaras Airport in eastern Chad, transporting weapons, ammunition, and medical equipment for the RSF, as well as the UAE's denial and assertions that its cargo planes had a purely humanitarian purpose. The panel concluded that the allegations against the UAE were credible. According to information gathered by the panel from sources in Chad and Darfur, the allegations were credible. Several sources in eastern Chad and Darfur, including among local native and administrative leaders and armed groups operating in those areas, reported to the panel that several times per week, weapons and ammunition shipments were unloaded from cargo planes arriving at Amjaras Airport, then loaded on trucks. Continuing to seek to operate under the cloak of humanitarianism, the UAE in September 2024 built a field hospital, emblazoned with the banner of the Red Crescent, next to the Amjaras airfield. But, tellingly, when the Red Cross sought to visit in order to understand what the UAE operation was doing under its protected banner, the officials were turned away for security reasons. The assessment of the Sudan's General Intelligence Service was that the unnatural expansion of activity in the Amjaras airport facilities, the flights to the airport, and the heavy presence of combat vehicles and military camps are not consistent with the argument that this was for the purpose of providing the needs of the field hospital. An advisor to the American NGO, the Sudan Conflict Observatory, Justin Lynch, put it this way: there is no plausible explanation for these airlifts except for weapons support to the RSF. No one is fooled. Likewise, the Sudanese General Intelligence Service has concluded that the UAE's field hospital at Amjaras Airport is the primary supply and support hub for the enemy. It has also determined that the UAE is continuing to use N'Djamena Airport in western Chad for the same purpose. The UAE, for its part, has sought to characterize such conclusions as nothing more than a duplicitous media disinformation campaign. Meanwhile, on 22nd January 2024, the European Union designated Al Junaid Multi-Activities Company under its Sudan sanctions regime. This Sudanese holding company, which had already been designated under the United Kingdom's sanction regime, is owned by Abdul Rahim Daglo, the brother of General Hamdan and his two sons. The reasons given by the European Union for the designation included a finding that the RSF is also using Al Junaid's gold production and exports